In late January of 2026, a senior engineer walked out of Apple's headquarters for the last time. 8 years building iPhones over. His new employer, OpenAI. But according to the lawsuit Apple would file 6 months later, he didn't leave empty-handed. Apple claims he kept a company laptop. And on that laptop, the complaint alleges he discovered something remarkable, a bug that still let him reach inside Apple's private network. His alleged reaction, preserved in a message to a former colleague, reads, "LOL, I found out I can access the network storage. So funny." Apple was not laughing. On Friday, July 10th, 2026, the $4.6 trillion company filed a 41-page lawsuit calling OpenAI's new hardware business, in its own words, rotten to its core. This is the story of how the most celebrated partnership in tech turned into a legal war. How Apple handed OpenAI the keys to the iPhone, and now claims OpenAI used them to rob the house, and why the real prize was never files or laptops. It's the device that comes after the smartphone. To understand why this lawsuit exists, you have to go back to a problem Apple could not solve. For over a decade, Apple owned the future. The iPhone printed money like no product in history. But by 2023, a new kind of technology was eating the world. And Apple was nowhere. ChatGPT reached 100 million users in 2 months. Microsoft poured billions into OpenAI. Google declared an internal code red. And Siri, Apple's own assistant, once a revolution, had become a punchline. Inside Apple Park, the pressure was crushing. The company that never follows was suddenly, visibly behind. So in June of 2024, at its Worldwide Developers Conference, Tim Cook did something Apple almost never does. He asked for help. Apple announced Apple Intelligence, and standing behind it, a partnership with OpenAI. ChatGPT would be built directly into the iPhone. Cook called it, quote, AI as only Apple can deliver it. Sam Altman posted that he was, quote, very happy to be partnering with Apple. Elon Musk was so furious, he called the integration an unacceptable security violation and threatened to ban Apple devices from his companies. But here is the detail almost everyone missed. No money changed hands. Apple paid OpenAI nothing. Zero. Apple got a world-class AI without building one. OpenAI got something it wanted even more. Distribution. A doorway to the largest, wealthiest user base on Earth, and the hope of converting millions of iPhone owners into paying ChatGPT subscribers. On paper, a perfect trade. In reality, a time bomb. Because a partnership with no money in it is a partnership with no glue. For a while, nobody noticed. OpenAI was too busy becoming the fastest-growing company in history. October 2024, valued at $157 billion. March 2025, $300 billion. August, $500 billion. Sam Altman was on top of the world, but he had a problem of his own, and it was the mirror image of Apple's. OpenAI had the intelligence, but not the device. Every single ChatGPT user reached the product through someone else's hardware. Apple's phones, Google's browsers, Microsoft's computers. In technology, there is an iron rule, and Apple wrote it. Whoever owns the device owns the customer. Altman wanted his own device, and to build it, he went to the one man who had designed the most successful device of all time, Jony Ive. 30 years at Apple, the designer of the iMac, the iPod, and the iPhone itself. Ive had left Apple in 2019 to start his own studio, Love From. And in 2023, quietly, he began working with Sam Altman on a secret hardware company. They called it I.O. Ive did not build it alone. Among I.O.'s co-founders was a man named Tang Tan. 24 years at Apple, rising to vice president of product design for the iPhone and the Apple Watch. One of the most senior hardware leaders Apple had. Remember that name. In May 2025, OpenAI bought I.O. outright, $6.5 billion, paid entirely in stock. Altman and Ive announced it with a short film sitting together in a San Francisco cafe. Internally, Altman reportedly told staff the device they were building would be, quote, the coolest piece of technology that the world will have ever seen. The plan, according to reporting, a third-core device, pocket-sized, screenless, designed to sit alongside your phone and your laptop, and one day, perhaps, to replace them. Apple's greatest designer, Apple's most senior hardware executives, building the thing that could end the iPhone's reign. The partnership was still officially alive. But somewhere in Cupertino, someone had already started counting the departures. On the surface, through 2025, Apple and OpenAI were still partners. But the alliance had 3 cracks running through its foundation, and all 3 were widening. The first crack was money. There wasn't any. Bloomberg reported that OpenAI grew frustrated with how deep ChatGPT was buried inside Apple's software, and the subscription revenue it had hoped for never arrived. Each side had entered the deal expecting the other to make it rich. Neither did. The second crack was talent. To build hardware, OpenAI needed hardware people, and the best hardware people on the planet all had the same former employer. According to Apple's complaint, more than 400 former Apple employees now work at OpenAI. That number is Apple's claim, and OpenAI has not confirmed it. But the direction of travel was obvious to everyone in Cupertino. The talent was flowing one way. The third crack was the device itself. OpenAI was not building an iPhone accessory. It was building an iPhone challenger, designed by the very people who had built the iPhone. Partner on the surface, rival underneath. Something had to break. It broke in January 2026. On January 12th, Apple announced that its new Siri would not run on OpenAI's technology at all. It would run on Google's Gemini, a deal reportedly worth around $1 billion a year to Google. 2 years earlier, Sam Altman had stood beside Apple's future. Now he had been replaced by Apple's oldest rival. The divorce had gone public, and behind the scenes, according to the complaint, Apple's security teams were finding things they did not like. 10 days after the Gemini announcement, that senior engineer from our opening, his name is Chang Liu, left Apple for OpenAI. Apple alleges he never returned his company laptop, exploited an authentication bug to keep accessing Apple's internal network, and downloaded dozens of confidential files, including one compilation the complaint describes as over 1,000 pages of unreleased product information. Apple further claims he coached a colleague on how to copy files without, in the complaint's words, trouble from the security team. And Tang Tan, the 24-year Apple veteran, now OpenAI's chief hardware officer, the complaint paints him as the architect. Apple alleges that Tan used Apple's secret internal code names while recruiting Apple employees, that he directed job candidates, people still working at Apple, to bring, quote, actual parts from Apple to their interviews for show-and-tell sessions, that he circulated an internal Apple offboarding checklist to teach new hires how to slip past Apple's exit security, that before leaving, he emailed himself confidential information about Apple's suppliers. Apple even alleges that OpenAI approached one of Apple's own manufacturing partners and had it perform a secret metal finishing technique, misleading the partner into believing Apple had approved it. Every one of these accusations comes from Apple's side of the courtroom. None of them has been proven. OpenAI's response was short and cold. "We have no interest in other companies' trade secrets." In February, according to the complaint, Apple sent OpenAI a letter laying out its concerns. Apple says it never received an answer. By May, the fight had turned surreal. Bloomberg reported that OpenAI was preparing legal action against Apple over the failed partnership. Both sides now felt cheated by the same deal. Apple moved first. July 10, 2026, Northern District of California. Defendants: OpenAI, IO Products, Tang Tan, and Chang Liu. Notably absent from the list, Jony Ive. Apple accuses him of nothing. The complaint's language is extraordinary for a company as controlled as Apple. Quote, "This is the tip of the iceberg." Quote, "Rotten to its core." Apple is demanding a court order to freeze OpenAI's use of its secrets, the return of every file, financial damages, and a jury trial. But here is the twist. Apple has a serious problem, and it comes from the very same courthouse. 1 month earlier, a federal judge threw out an almost identical case. Elon Musk's xAI had sued OpenAI for exactly this: poaching an engineer, stealing secrets. On June 15th, Judge Rita Lynn dismissed it permanently. Her reasoning: simply asking a new hire about his previous work is a routine part of hiring, not evidence of theft. Otherwise, she warned, every company in America could be sued just for interviewing a rival's employees. Hiring your competitors' people is legal. It is how Silicon Valley has always worked. Apple itself was built on talent from Xerox and elsewhere, which means Apple must prove something much harder. Not that OpenAI hired its people, but that OpenAI directed a coordinated scheme and actually used what was taken. That is why the laptop matters. That is why the 1,000-page download matters. That is why a 2-line message, LOL, so funny, may end up being worth billions. So how does a war like this end? History offers a clue. The most famous trade secrets battle in tech was Waymo versus Uber, a stolen files saga over self-driving cars. It ended not with a verdict, but with a settlement. Roughly $245 million in equity, paid quietly 5 days into trial. Most of these wars end the same way. But even a settlement has a price, and the price is time. OpenAI's device has already slipped to 2027. The company has filed for what could be a $1 trillion IPO. Wall Street does not love companies with courtroom clouds over their flagship product. Every month this case survives, it costs OpenAI something, and Apple knows it. Meanwhile, Apple itself is turning a page. On September 1st, Tim Cook hands the company to John Ternus, a hardware engineer, which means this lawsuit may be remembered as the last war Tim Cook started, and the first one his successor has to finish. Strip away the filings, the laptops, the legal language, and this case was never really about stolen files. It is about who controls the next device. For 30 years, the companies that owned the device owned the future. Apple knows that better than anyone, because Apple wrote that playbook. The question a California courtroom will now help answer is whether OpenAI gets to write the next one, and whether it earned that chance fairly, or, as Apple claims, built it on stolen foundations. The claims have not been tested in court, the device has not been released, and the war has only just begun.